Okay, thanks, Graham. And we're going to have a review session of the things that we have covered previously. So let's first of all start with the Heart Sutra. Arya Triple Gem, Dasne here at one time. We were traveling on the Matsabachas mountain in Rajgiri together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was observing concentration on categories of fundamental core profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya, Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya, Avalokiteshvara. How should any son of the lineage train wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that to the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya, Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Shariputra. Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the divine perfection of wisdom, should look upon like this correctly and repeatedly, beholding those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form, emptiness is not other than form, form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, composition, factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no composition, factors, no consciousness. No eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no I element and so on up to including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on up to including no aging and death and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. No attainment and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on the well-known perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration, without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell on 3 times also manifestly completely awakened to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment, son of perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequal, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering should be known as the truth, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared. Tata Om Gate Gate Para Gate Para Samgate Bodhi Soha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, should join the perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya, Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage, it is like that, it is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom just as you have indicated, even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan having thus spoken, the Venerable Shariputra, the Mahasattva, Arya, Avalokiteshvara, and those entire and with words of God's instrument, the Suras and Gandharvas were overjoyed and highly praised as spoken by the Bhagavan. For I fit until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest assembly, and the accumulations I gather and listen to. May I attain the state of a Buddha to be able to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest assembly. And accumulations may I attain the state of a Buddha to be able to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest assembly. From the accumulations that I collect by listening to the teachings, may I attain the state of a Buddha to be able to benefit all sentient beings. Right. So hopefully we'll have better internet connection this afternoon. Did you say that you had a patchy connection during the discussion and then it got better?
Just before it, just starting it, we had to start it a couple of times, but then it was okay.
All right. Brought my phone as a backup if that doesn't work. Anyway, so thought of today doing a couple of secondary offenses in relation to the Bodhisattva vow, and also continuing with what we studied yesterday. But let's first of all continue with what we studied yesterday, and hopefully also cover some of the bits that Geshe-la covered today, so that at least we'll have a basis covered, at least for this week. Then we'll see how much time we have at the end of the session. So I'll put the outline in front of us. So we've been looking at a way to train in the conduct of guiding the mind by means of mindfulness and introspection, presenting the three types of ethics. Ethics of refraining from negative actions, which yesterday in our discussion in our tutorial, we said that actually it refers here to mainly to ethics of guarding one's vow. So that's the first one. Then yesterday we also studied the way to train in the ethics of gathering virtuous dharmas. So in looking at the structure of ethics of refraining from negative actions, we said that in general, if you need to guard your vows, a vow that you would have, then you need to look at, either be it the Pratimoksha vow or the Bodhisattva vow or the Tantric vow, you need to look at what you should do and what you cannot do, right? What you need to abstain from and what you need to adopt. So then, first of all, with making effort to purify all conduct of the three doors, we looked at our actions of basically body and speech on one hand, physical actions, making sure that the way that we carry ourselves physically and mentally is not in contradiction to the vows that we have, which means that we have to guard mindfulness, we have to guard vigilance or alertness to make sure that we do not transgress the training, the vow. And then also we need to guard against all deterioration. So here we spoke of the list of 27 gateways for mistaken conduct, and guarding against deterioration in the training of the mind, which we studied yesterday in the Tute, was to look at 9 points of cultivating virtue that will be helpful in terms of guarding our training. So I wanted to continue with that. So to begin with, just before we continue with what we said yesterday, no, actually, let's continue with that just to make sure that we complete those 9 points of virtue. So when we look at the structure, guarding by means of the individual antidote, then common antidotes, and the way to apply oneself to cultivating the antidote, we said that guarding by means of individual antidotes was not presented as a specific antidote to afflictive states of mind. It's rather that here Shantideva explained virtuous states of mind that we adopt in order to make sure that our mind becomes settled in guarding the vows that we have or guarding our ethical discipline. So he said that based on, in using also Khenpo Kumpel's commentary, based on, first of all, gaining knowledge, right? So learning what we need to do at the beginning, in the middle, and at the end, we become certain about what we need to do, right? So developing certainty in the Dharma, becoming resolute in that, having faith, for example, in the 3 jewels, having faith in the trainings, having faith in our teachers, also being respectful to our abbots, to our teachers, to our masters, and so forth. So it seems that rather than looking at antidotes that are specific antidote to different afflictive states of mind, it's general antidotes to, you can say, things that would cause transgressions with respect to our ethical discipline. So if we develop those virtues, we will be protected. So it seems to me when I look at this list of antidotes or list of attitudes, virtuous state of mind to adopt, it seems that here Shantideva is speaking in a really general way about the type of attitude that we should adopt as Dharma practitioners. If we want to sustain a mind that is virtuous, a mind that does not transgress the teachings, then it says, let's look at those verses. These are verses 55 and 56. It says, I should be very resolute, which means certain in the Dharma, faithful, steady, which means, as we said yesterday, not to allow those secondary or small circumstances to interfere with our Dharma practice, in the sense that the commentary said that, for example, do not allow conditions such as food, clothing, and so forth to take you away from your Dharma practice, right? So we need to develop stability in a practice. Respectful, polite, polite with our attitude to others. Now, we spoke about yesterday, we had a discussion about a sense of shame and embarrassment from a Buddhist perspective. So not from a worldly perspective, not to have a low self-esteem, not to look down on yourself, and also not to get caught in worldly affairs, such as, for example, being embarrassed about not having, I don't know, the right clothes or so forth, but to develop a good sense of abstention from wrongdoings, either taking yourself as a reason or taking others as reasons. So that is a sense of shame. And also together with that comes a sense of fear in thinking that if I do transgress my trainings, I will experience the result of my actions, right? So this is a sense of fear. And we also mentioned pacification, which referred to making sure that we conduct ourselves in a way that is pacified, that we do not constantly react to the input that we get from the senses, the five senses, right? So in that sense, we behave in a pacified and tame way. So we've covered that yesterday. Let's look at the next verse. Yes?
I read that Manjushrie's Nectar.
Yeah, a great book, isn't it?
Sorry?
It's a great book, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, I think that all the books that I'm reading on the Bodhisattva way of life commentaries are all very good.
Yeah.
But this one, which is talking specifically about that verse, which I thought, now what, I would like a bit of help in unpackaging this again. And it goes, our behaviour should be disciplined and calm. We should work quietly for the happiness of others. For bodhisattvas are perilous objects, and it is therefore important to protect others from losing faith in us.
Mm.
And perilous means, because I thought, no, perilous, it's sort of, and the other word they use, which is similar to it, nefarious, nefarious company.
Yeah.
Nefarious and perilous have similar meanings, and they more or less mean a dangerous.
Dangerous, yeah.
Sort of, yeah, it's just,
reckless.
So
Yeah.
nefarious used in the same context?
it was used in a similar context that we shouldn't hang around with nefarious company.
Yeah. The first company is what we call bad company, in the sense that, yeah.
Right, but then in terms of, did it say bodhisattvas are perilous? What's the perilous object?
The perilous, yeah, for bodhisattvas are perilous objects.
Yeah, so it seems that it's a different context.
No.
These are perilous objects for oneself.
So it's actually, I can put it on the screen because it's this. So Wangmo is asking at home, what is the name of the book? So that's the Nectar of Manjushrie's Speech, which is, where is it? Let's see. There it is. So we have the available commentary of Khenpo Kumpen's. We have the 5 chapters, the first 5 chapters that were freely available. They were not under copyright. The translator offered it to everyone. So we have it available online. And then the rest of the chapters are found in the Nectar of Manjushrie's Speech. So it seems to me, I'm just guessing that, first of all, the translator produced a translation of the first 5 chapters, and then he got together with some other people and they edited the first translation, the first 5 chapters, together with all the other chapters into this book, the Nectar of Manjushrie's Speech. So we have here the section that you referred to. So,
That verse 55.
55, all right. So one should possess a sense of shame in the presence of others. That was with respect to being peaceful, right? So one must be peaceful. That is to say, one must, in general, control the gate to the 5 sense organs, particularly the gate to the organs of the eyes, ears, and mind. Without controlling this, they will give rise to desire, anger, and so forth. So that's in general. Then the next section says, if one thinks I cannot control the gate of my sense organs because my distractions of desire and anger are too great, one is disempowering oneself. In other words, defeating oneself, and this is not correct. Is this the section that you refer to? No, but it's the next one here. Moreover, through peaceful and tame conduct and the like, I should strive with the sole aim to delight others. Since bodhisattvas are perilous objects, they must protect the minds of others against disbelief.
Yeah.
All right.
It sounds odd that it is that the bodhisattvas are perilous.
Yeah, and the other context.
Changes in banana, you.
Yeah. It's a perilous object.
It means
That might be because like you can like recreate any negativity around
Exactly.
Yeah.
like it's going to be much worse.
Yeah.
Anybody
Yeah.
else.
Yeah, don't create negativity around body.
So it's not the bodhisattvas that are perilous, it's just I run the risk of developing some really perilous
Negative karma in
Yeah.
relation to bodies.
being around.
I think so.
there are objects which is perilous in that
I think
sense.
it's not just you, but they're not just talking about me.
Really, I don't think she was
Usually a pause.
she's using the royal
We're using the royal eye.
Thank you, Jackie,
That's
yes.
right.
So just to kind of, in the meantime, I just had a look at the dictionary to find maybe other ways that we can understand that translation. So the word in Tibetan says it means anything that imposes itself with great force, severity, which means that it's very serious in the sense of weighty, cannot be taken lightly, having a very strong effect. So it is used in a variety of contexts.
To the heaviness of the object.
Yeah, yeah,
The weightiness of the object.
the weightiness of the object. So
Like the Maya and secret entrance.
Mm.
Serious. Really serious.
Really serious. Jargon, don't get scared serious.
OMG serious.
OMB.
Yeah. All right. No worries. So then we had, I think that also yesterday, did we speak about the next verse? I should not be disheartened by the whims of the childish who are in discord with one another. I don't think that we did, but I think that that's also quite easy. So I should not be disheartened by a biased attitude. Now it says by the whim of the childish, which means that some people will like you, some people will not like you. Some people will criticize you, some people will praise you. So not be disheartened by those that criticize you, that blame you, and so forth. Particularly when you think of that in terms of, again, how do you develop a constant, steady, resolute practice of doing what you should be doing, abstaining from wrongdoings? You might be criticized by others. Others might look down on you, particularly when you think of a thing, being, for example, a Buddhist in a society that is, by and large, the majority of people are not Buddhist, let's say. Or even more so when you become a monastic, so you kind of, even more so, you're not in all situations you'd accord with society, right? So you shouldn't be disheartened by criticism, blame, or comments that are made on you. Let's look at what the commentary says. I will not be disheartened by the fact that some like my conduct and praise me and others dislike my conduct and slander me, because the desires of the childish-like sentient beings, ordinary beings who live in mutual discord, differ. Some being pleased while others are angry. Right, so not being too susceptible to what other people think about you. Then, or say what other people say about you. Then it says I should be merciful, thinking this mind of theirs is due to the generation of the affliction. So even when they criticize you, they treat you in a way that is unfair, then react to that with a sense of compassion, thinking that the mind is under the power of afflictive states of mind. So it also points out the seventh virtue that we adopt, which is a sense of love and compassion to sentient beings who are controlled by the affliction. So this is also part of a virtuous state of mind, a virtuous attitude that we adopt in a practice. Well, you have more than 9 because sometimes they combine 2 into 1. Like, for example, having a sense of shame and fear are combined into 1. Yeah. I composed the list on my class notes. So then let's look at some more. Just finish the list. So we have then we have the next verse, which in Gyatso Dhamma Rinpoche's commentary is coming under the title of the common antidotes. So of the common antidotes, we regard a self as like an apparition, like an illusion. So here, Shantideva doesn't really explain how to do it. The main explanation is coming in chapter number 9, when we will look at the chapter on wisdom. So here it says that just remind yourself that I am like an illusion, I am like an apparition. And the way that the commentary addresses that, it says that just we need to loosen up our fixation on I or me. So almost with everything that we do, not only everything that we do, but also in our thoughts, we have a strong sense of I and mine. And the stronger the sense of I and mine become, the more you could say we become entrenched in our own ignorance. Afflictive emotions arise due to the power of ignorance, but also a sense of self-cherishing is also paired up with self-grasping. So here, without giving an explanation of how do we view ourselves as like an apparition, since that the general indication about how to cultivate the virtuous state of mind is just relax that strong sense of I, regard yourself as an apparition, like an apparition. And I think that we can also tie together with how you practice the 6 perfections within each one of the perfections. So we have the wisdom in the perfection of ethical discipline. So you got yourself as the person who's practicing ethics, the one that abstains from wrongdoings. You regard yourself as empty of inherent existence, and you exist just like an illusion, like an apparition. So let's read through this verse. It says, having control over that which is actually not misdeeds in myself and other sentient beings, I should always hold my mind like an emanation without an I. Let's see how Gyatso Dhamma Rinpoche explains that in his commentary, just to make sure that it is clear. So it's in verse 57, I think. The engagement in virtuous actions free from accepted and natural negativity. Accepted and natural negativity, are we clear about what they are? Well, we have natural misdeeds like killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, and so forth. All these are called natural misdeeds. But there are also those which are prescribed misdeeds, which means that the Buddha formulated them as rules for people that have vows, for example. So, for example, for monastics, we cannot drink alcohol, but it's not negative by nature. It is a prescribed misdeed. If you're a monk or a nun, or if you're a lay person that have committed themselves to abstain from alcohol and you do that, it's not a natural misdeed, it is a prescribed misdeed. It is an accepted misdeed. So engagement in virtuous actions free from accepted and natural negativity is for the purpose of oneself, not degenerating, and for the benefit of sentient beings. Engage in actions if they are as if they are illusions or emanations by holding them with the wisdom realizing emptiness. Then the last one in the list, and the last virtuous state that we adopt, is to repeatedly think of becoming resolute in extracting the essence of a life with freedoms and opportunities, which is covered by the next verse, which gives us this general indication of how we should go about and cultivate the antidote. So it says, by thinking again and again that after a long time I have obtained the supreme leisures, that I should hold my mind as utterly unshakable as Mount Meru. So again, think about it as we spoke about making sure that we abstain from those 27 gateways for mistaken conduct, and developing those 9 virtuous attitudes that will make us as practitioners become solid in a Dharma practice. Be focused on virtue, be certain in the Dharma, resolute, have faith, have respect towards our teachers, also be respectful to others, developing a sense of shame in a practice, in a sense that we think that I cannot engage in negative actions because I'm Buddhist, I have a vow, and so forth. And we also have a sense of fear from the result of negative actions. We also become stable in that we do not step away from what we committed ourselves to do as practitioners just because others dislike what we do or because others criticize us and so forth. We also treat others with a sense of love and compassion, in recognizing that when they behave badly, when they criticize us, or when they get involved in actions that are negative in general, they do that under the sway of afflictive states of mind. And we also make sure that continuously we keep that resolve to make the most out of our life with freedoms and opportunities. So the section that speaks about guarding against deterioration of the mind, and in the commentary, it comes under the banner of applying antidotes. Remember that it's not just specific antidotes to specific afflictions. It's more like if you generate this virtuous attitude in your practice, you'll be antidoting deterioration to the mind.
And I mean, that's so skillful from Shanti Deva's point of view that, if you had 27 antidotes for 27, those actions, you'd be quite confused, I think. I would be anyway.
You'll be what, sorry?
Confused, trying to work out, well, what am I doing? So what's the antidote do I need to apply? By giving just these 9, he's been really skillful and making a smaller number and things that are just good attitudes. So I would like, I'm just wondering if it's a good idea for us to just, I'd be interested to hear how other people in their daily practices remember that concept of this precious human rebirth and how fortunate we are to have these existing conditions, because I mean the 7 limbs are great for some of these, and helping you to remember them. I mean, what do other people use to help highlight that point? Because I think it's really a critical one. We really appreciate that. It's the antidote to a lot of things.
Well, I can say that, when I, every day when I start my morning meditation, so we normally start it with refuge.
Yeah.
But normally I make sure that I do some meditation on precious human rebirth and death and impermanence just before.
Stage.
Yeah, at that stage. So rather than just kind of sitting down and immediately going for refuge, then it takes me normally 15 minutes to get to refuge, because I think of, precious human rebirth and death and impermanence. So, it'd be nice to also, it'd be good if would have been good if I would maintain it also at other periods of the day, but at least I do it in the morning.
Yeah, because I know Lama Zopa says it's good to do it as soon as you wake up. Hooray, I'm alive, thank goodness I've got this,
Well, whenever I wake up, I think myself, oh no, I wish I had 1 more hour of sleep. So it's hard to kind of wake up with that hooray attitude. So what did Dechen say? So Dechen was asking if people have, she was wondering about people's habits and ability to be constantly reminded of precious human rebirth with freedoms and opportunities. If people have tips or things that we can inform each other or help each other with becoming more mindful of precious human rebirth.
Well, remembering to do it on a daily basis.
Yeah, remember to do it on a daily basis.
Whereabouts in people's practices do they spend time thinking about this life?
Yeah.
The preciousness of this human rebirth.
Mm-hmm.
Just do it throughout the day. Day to day, you do it in a formal sense, but you also do it in an informal sense, in the sense you watch the news and you see all the dying, so you realize, wow.
Yeah.
Not in a formal state.
Yeah, so you do it kind of a formal meditation session, but also I'm just repeating it for the people at home. So yeah, so you also do it in an informal way when you come across, when you watch the news, for example, and you get news on different calamities, accidents, or what have you, then you remind yourself that you do have a precious human rebirth and you need to make the most out of it.
I can make the most out of it.
Yeah. Also, Shannon was asking, what is the actual symbolism of Mount Meru? I don't know what the actual symbolism is, apart from, in the Buddhist tradition, at least in Buddhist cosmology, it's considered to be the nexus of the universe. It's like the center of the world. So we have Mount Meru in the middle and the continents around it. And it's considered also to be like, stable. Normally it is given as an example of stability and steadfastness. Any other ideas of Mount Meru? It's also, I think, from a tantric perspective, it's also connected with Tantra. I think that's the abode of Chakasambhara. I'm not sure.
So it's not the same as Mount Kailash?
No.
Someone says it doesn't exist in the world.
Okay.
So maybe Chakasambhara is Mount Kailash. Anyway, I'm not kind of, I'm usually a total, I don't have the facts sorted with all those symbolism of those places.
It's just like you said, it's just like it just represents like the spherical phenomena, like, the center of all phenomena.
Yeah, the center of all phenomena.
Yes, that's right. It's where the Buddhas live. In Japanese Buddhism, it's called Holy Eagle Peak. So every sort of strain of Buddhism has a reference to that. And it's in the Lotus Sutra, that's where Shakyamuni lives, and all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So if you reference the Lotus Sutra, at least.
Well, it sounds like, in post-COVID world, this is where the first place that we should visit, when the borders will be opened.
Yes, the Eagle, what was it?
The Eagle, yeah, it had a beautiful name, the Eagle Pit.
Holy Eagle Peak.
Okay.
The Holy Eagle Peak.
I'm buying a ticket
Yes.
to Holy Eagle Peak.
Vulture's Peak, is it?
Yeah.
Sorry? What was that?
Vultures.
Vulture's Peak.
Not to get confused with Vulture's Peak, yeah.
Thanks, Grant.
Well, they're both birds, let's face it. I suppose when you're enlightened, you see a vulture and an eagle as one and the same, really.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, in Tibetan culture, vultures are the eaters of the dead. So they're very strong from a symbolic perspective.
Mm.
It's what keeps, what keeps all the vermin away. Anyway, eagle, in that sense, eagle and vulture would have an equal place in terms of symbolism.
Cool.
Good.
Okay.
Thank you, Alicia, for that support.
All right, so before we move on to the next ethical discipline, I just wanted to wrap this up because it's we have looked at ethical discipline of abstaining from wrongdoings, and sometimes it is called ethical discipline of vows. Now, one question that I wanted to introduce is it only if you have vows, only if you have taken either the lay vow or a monastic vow or the Bodhisattva vow, only if you have a vow do you guard these ethics?
No, you got them in Pratimoksha.
If you haven't taken a Pratimoksha vow.
Well, there is certainly the ethics that you in society.
Mm.
One would hope that anyway.
So you said that one would hope that anyway in society you would be guarding these ethics.
Yeah, of reflection of ethics.
Mm.
Talking about it as a practice of ethics.
Mm. So what about, so just to kind of summarize your points, you said that you don't have to have a vow in order to practice ethical discipline of restraint, of abstaining from wrongdoing, because this is also related to abstaining from wrongdoings that are commonly accepted as wrongdoings in society, like natural misdeeds, which are also, even if you haven't taken a vow, they say that even if you haven't taken a vow, they're still common with the Bodhisattva vow, right? They're still kind of implied within the Bodhisattva vow or within the Bodhisattva conduct.
It's a moral compass.
It's a moral compass. One thing that I also wanted to do is to look at Lama Tsongkhapa's
But it's the power of the, if you have got the vows, the power of the protection of it and the willingness of breaking is different to the other.
if you have the vow, then no, the weight of the actions becomes much more significant. Yeah. How do I increase that? Let's see. Just a second. All right. So just a second, people at home. I'm just looking for something.
We're not going anywhere
All right.
yet.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Let's look at how Lama Tsongkhapa describes the ethical discipline of restraint in his Lamrim Chema. So it draws from the Bodhisattva level, which is the Bodhisattva Bhumi, text by Asanga. And he says that the ethical discipline of restraint is the 7 types of vows of individual liberation. So to begin with, it says that it does refer to vows, the Pratimoksha vows. Thus, given that there are those who have taken vows of individual liberation, so it could be that you're a lay practitioner, a male or female upasaka, upasaki, or you might have taken a one-day vow. That's also possible, that you've taken a one-day vow. And also keeping the Bodhisattva vows, the ethical discipline of restraint is either the actual vows of individual liberation for the group of either lay persons of renunciates, monastics, or it is a practice of restraint and abstention that would be associated with those actual vows, which means that if you haven't taken the lay vow, if you're not a monk or a nun, it is also a formulated mode of conduct which is associated with those vows, which means that even if you don't have the vow, you should abstain from those wrongdoings. Also, given that those who have taken the Bodhisattva vows, who are unsuited to be recipients of the vows of individual liberation, the ethical discipline of restraint is the practice of restraint and abstention that gives up any deed that is wrong by nature or any deed that is wrong by prohibition that would be associated with the vows of individual liberation. So there are certain situations where a person is not a basis for taking a Pratimoksha vow. It doesn't mean that they cannot train as Bodhisattva. So they train as Bodhisattva, and they still need to guard the things that are common to the Pratimoksha vow. Even if they don't have this vow, they still need to refrain from killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, and so forth, which are, you can say, common or basic ethical discipline that abstains from the 10 non-virtue. But and also on top of that, they should also, if you say that monastics and likewise lay practitioners can or should avoid intoxicants, then even if you don't have the vow, even if you're not a basis for vow, within your training as Bodhisattva, as much as you can, you should also refrain from that. So, I was hoping that no one asked that.
Yeah, I was thinking about that.
Yeah. No, I think that here it's not said in a very clear way, but it says that in previous sections in the chapter, Lama Tsongkhapa referred to those who are not suitable basis for generating a pratimoksha vow. So there are those who don't have a fixed biological sex. So rather than I think that now in common era, we sometimes distinguish between sex and gender. From a Buddhist perspective, there are those cases, and sometimes Tibetan explain that as, like, for example, a baby is born and they change sex 3 times. Actually, they're weird.
You know, you can do it.
Sorry?
Yeah, so it happens naturally, but it also happens by volition.
Yeah.
Oh, well, not volition, by making operation.
Well, there is in Tibetan society, this is actually kind of pretty interesting. So there are customs in Tibetan society. It's like in some parts of Tibetan, when a baby boy is born, one of the things that you do earlier on, maybe straight after birth, is it's weird. Kind of, you put a ring on the penis and then take it out. That ensures that the baby does not change sex.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. I haven't had it done on me, so I don't know.
Some are born into sex.
Yeah.
They're all hermaphrodite.
Yeah. So I think that those cases are cases which are said to be you cannot generate a pratimoksha vow on that basis.
Is it specific to particular sex?
No, because you have in the pratimoksha vow you have you cover both sexes, male and female.
And eunuch's another one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't understand why.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, I think that, you know, the different explanation. I think that kind of sometimes it's hard to understand that, because I think that some of the vows or a lot of what you find in the vows are taken from Indian tradition, how it used to be 2,600 years ago. So when you look at the literature of the Vinaya and how certain vows are explained, they say that in one occasion, such and such things has occurred, and that created a problem. And therefore the Buddha formulated the rule, and that became a rule for monastic.
Specific to that type of situation.
Yeah.
Yes. General rule, because it doesn't make sense otherwise.
No, it doesn't. But I mean, that's the same with a number of vows too. You know, you can understand it contextually. You know, you take it back 2,500 years ago, but in this day and age, it doesn't seem to be quite so.
So, you know, I mentioned that because at least with respect to you know, what we're discussing now, you know, it could have like an historical significance, a cultural historical significance in India 2,600 years ago, which I'm not aware of. So that could be one thing. When you speak with Tibetan teachers about it, and they explain what was the rationale behind that, and say that at least traditionally someone that was born with having, for example, both sexes or no sex at all, you know, someone that had a defect in the biological defect in the reproductive system or the sex organs or whatever, was someone that naturally was more prone to having issues or difficulties in their life, which would then impact on their ability to stay monastic in a stable way. I think that we can shake our head because we're used to we're used to thinking about it in this context, in this day, you know, this day and age where we have kind of certain education system, certain trends in society, certain kind of a thing that we're moving towards more kind of acceptance and so forth.
I
But
thought it was referring to prime moksha. Like there's the lay prime moksha, right?
no, also
Sorry?
monastics also.
Monastics,
So
but it said if you
prime moksha
have
is solely referring to monastic.
Pratimoksha covers both lay people and monastics.
Yeah, I was thinking in the lay context, it wouldn't have created a big problem if you're intersex to take the lay prime moksha, but maybe for monastics.
I don't know. It is studied in general, so I wouldn't be able to know.
sexual.
Anyway, sorry to take so much.
No, it's okay. It's okay. But I think that also another thing, just to add to that discussion, when you become ordained, for example, then you need to give up certain things, like for example, sexual behavior. Now, if your genitalia is not functioning, you don't have the basis for abstention.
So it should be easier.
Sorry?
No, but it should be easier.
Yeah, that should be easier, but yeah.
You can't even abstain.
No, if you have problems with your genitalia, then you cannot really fulfill. You don't have the basis of abstention because you wouldn't have to abstain from something. So that would mean that you are not basis for taking that vow. So that could be.
Probably have an operation to put something on. So.
Anyway.
And to point out that people still in this day in Indian villages are born with both sexes. They're called, that's being a hermaphrodite. And when the child reaches sexual maturity, they will have both sexes, typically the male penis and the female breast. And these people live in groups, and when they hear of such a child being born, they'll take. So if you watch some of the Indian movies, let's say from the 70s, you will see them in the dance sequences. So it's, yeah, so it's still very popular to this day because they don't have the sort of, I don't know, you don't hear of it so much in the West because we have prenatal care, which I think is aimed for that. But anyway, so there we go.
Yeah.
I just want another one, which is the common one about as a lay person, refraining from sexual misconduct, and it used to say in our record having the wrong orifice, and people who were gay thought that meant they couldn't become Buddhists, but then it had a historical context and it was about women being annually raped at the time of Buddha. So Rinpoche said, take it out, that's stopping people from taking that out because they misunderstand what it's about. So there's a lot of context to this.
All right. I mean, it's also, I have to say that sometimes it's interesting because when you study these topics like that with Tibetans or Taiwanese, for example, Chinese, then some of the rules are given and people just nod their head and continue on. Amongst foreigners, it's always become like a really important and juicy discussion, which I think that it highlights kind of the obsession that we have with sex. I mean, it's not that others don't have the obsession with sex. We're all motivated by attachment, desire, and so forth. But it seems that kind of this part of discussion in which kind of people break apart what I can do and what I cannot do is so emphasized in our cultural context that I just found it interesting.
Well, for me, it's not about the sex; it's about equality. Equality amongst all sexes, regardless of whether you've got balls or not. It's equality. That everybody should be allowed to have these vows if they want to take them. So
take it up with the Buddha. Take it up with the Buddha.
But you can take it up.
It's a bit hard.
But I think that when you say equality, I think that this word equality, or when we speak about it like that, it is based on the assumption that they are discriminated against. Sorry?
Well, they can't take the vows, so they are being discriminated.
Well, not everything that you cannot do means that you've been discriminated against. There might be kind of a valid reason for that, which, you know, I'm not saying that
They also can't break a vow, can they?
We sometimes say that we need to promote, for example, equality, in thinking that there necessarily is a discrimination. I don't think that there is necessarily a discrimination here. I think that there might be actually a valid reason which I'm not aware of. I mean, it's the same like, you know, no, actually, I'm not gonna say that. Step back. I'm not gonna say that.
Flexibility around these issues at the time of the Buddha. I think that was
Yeah.
great, even a greater degree of acceptance of that kind of diversity at the time of the Buddha.
Hmm.
I was just interested in the sense that how can you take the Bodhisattva vow but not be able to take it?
Well, you can, yeah. Yes, I mean, you can take, to begin with, without looking at, you know, those reasons why in certain situations you cannot take a pratimoksha vow. In general, taking the Bodhisattva vow does not necessitate you having taken the lay vow or an ordination vow, right? So you can be a lay practitioner that hasn't taken the vow because you think that for the time being, I don't want to take the vow, but you can still take the Bodhisattva vow. However, if you do take a vow, you have a better basis, a more solid basis for guarding the Bodhisattva vow.
However, in our tradition, it is usually that it is given on the basis of, no, it's not, it's taking refuge, it's not taking the pratimoksha.
No, but you can also take refuge. When you look at the vow of approaching virtue, the upasaki, then you have different classes of the lay vow. So you can have a lay vow which is just going for refuge, which means that you make a commitment to go for refuge from this time on and for the rest of your life. You are not committing yourself to abstain from killing, stealing, and so forth. You just committed to going for refuge. That could be, yeah, a basis for taking the Bodhisattva vow. But I wanted just to make sure, since the time is running out. So again, we finished looking at the way to train in the ethics of refraining from negative actions. So we spoke about vows, not having vows, looking at a mind, looking at a body, you know, what we do with the mind, what we do with the body and speech. Altogether, it seems that the import of this ethical discipline is looking at what we should do, what we should not do, what is to be accepted, what is to be adopted, and what should be cast aside, and making sure that we do it and guard against all deteriorations. So that's the first step of ethics. The second one is ethics in gathering virtuous dharmas, which we discussed yesterday in relation to abandoning attachment to the body because for not training in ethics, right? So I think that it was in relation to Dechan's question. The main hindrance for guarding ethics of cultivating or gathering virtuous dharmas is attachment that we have to the body. Now, what about it being a hindrance to ethical discipline of restraint? Wouldn't be also a main hindrance for ethical discipline of restraint?
Attachment to the body.
Hmm. Yeah, could be. Yeah, clearly. Yeah. So yeah, it's a kind of, you know, it's I wanted to bring it up because then I thought to myself, when we speak of ethical discipline of restraint and ethical discipline of gathering virtuous dharmas, are they necessarily separate? Could it be that kind of you practice them together? You classify them differently, but are they mutually exclusive, or is there a common basis to them? So you said that there is a common basis to them. Yeah, I also would think that there is a common basis to them.
It'd be weird if they were mutually exclusive.
Let's quickly look at how Lama Tsongkhapa describes ethical discipline of gathering virtues dharmas. Yeah, Maggie, you should be you should have a laser stick,
That's right. Yeah, one of those pointers.
Yeah, a pointer.
I need a laser.
Yeah.
Keep them on track.
All right, so this ethical discipline of gathering virtue means that you focus on virtues such as the 6 perfections and then develop the virtues that you have not developed in your mind. Do not spoil the ones you have already developed and increase both of these ever further, right? Like the verse that we say about bodhicitta, may the precious body mind not yet born and rise and grow, may the bond have not declined but increase more and more. So this is, it seems, the gist of the ethical discipline of gathering virtue, getting all the virtues under your belt. In order to do that, first off, Shantideva says we need to reduce and rid ourselves of attachment that we have to the body. So I think that we spoke of quite a few verses in relation to that, but I think that are rather clear how we think of the body having no essence, dissecting the body, the bones, the blood, and so forth. Yeah, impure. I'm wondering if you have any questions with respect to them. If not, so we have just 4 minutes. Let's just squeeze one secondary offense.
Let's not do one.
Yeah, squeeze in a secondary offense within 4 minutes. I can do it in less than that. In a split second, I can do a secondary offense. All right. Where is it, Maggie? Yes. Sorry? There it is. All right. We spoke of number 21 yesterday. Let's look at 22. If due to laziness or idleness, you embrace and do not try to dispel the pleasures of sleeping during the day, excepting the afternoon session, during the first and last part of the night, all the pleasures of dullness, lying in bed and so forth, it is a secondary offense of not acting to dispel laziness and the like. So remember that we're doomed. So remember that we are now looking at a list of 3 secondary offenses which are incompatible with joyous effort or enthusiastic effort, which is to delight in virtue. So the opposite of delighting in virtue is laziness. So laziness is not delighting in virtue, and there could be different types of laziness. So here, the one that is emphasized is laziness of just being idle.
However, as Geshe was asked a question about this one last year sometime, and was that prohibiting sleeping in the daytime?
Yeah.
And Geshe said no. So Geshe said no, because if the fact that you set your bodhicitta motivation, and so then whatever you do, sleeping and eating more, it's all done with bodhicitta motivation.
So,
Geshe was asked that.
So Geshe Tsultrim?
Yes, Geshe
okay.
Tsultrim.
So I'm just going to repeat it for the people at home. So he said that Geshe Tsultrim was asked about it last year, and he said that if you set a bodhicitta motivation, then you can also take a rest for the bodhicitta motivation.
Yes.
You know, so it doesn't cover that section.
So it's okay to sleep during. Geshe gave the example of himself, like getting up at the time 4. He starts his practice at 4 or whatever. And so, and then he said maybe around breakfast time, sometime around there, he might have a half-hour nap. Yeah. So he was using that as the example.
So what can you do if you lost your mojo, like lost your joyous effort? How's the best way to get it back?
The best way to get it back, I think that the best way, the antidotes to laziness is to begin with meditating on death and impermanence. Precious human body, death and impermanence, including with reminding yourself of Buddha nature. Sorry?
That's okay.
Well, you know, later on when we'll look at joyous effort, one of them is The first one that is explained is Amo-like joyous effort, in which you kind of like building a defense post, a defense field against those attitudes that can creep in, like, you know, losing your module, losing your inspiration, becoming a bit deflated. So kind of you build this internal resilience, but obviously it's not going to be built in an instant. So in order to build this internal resilience, then, you know, meditate on death and impermanence, precious human rebirth, having a Buddha nature, and so forth. I mean, this covers a whole range of laziness. You know, in English we call laziness just, you know, being inactive or being idle, not working too hard. But when you think about it as not delighting in virtue, not being enthused about virtue, it gives you a much broader perspective. Like, for example, if you also, it's called being attracted to ignoble activities, which means that not having your priorities right. So you think that I really should meditate, or I really should study, but I just want to finish watching this TV series, or I just want to have a go out for a walk, or I just want to hang out with friends. You know, so you keep on postponing things, which means that you're not really enthused about your meditation session. It's not a thing that, yeah, I need to meditate now. You know, so that's considered to be laziness. That, yeah, procrastination. You know, I think that basically having your priorities not set in the right way. Laziness.
Were you allowed to watch Hungry Ghosts?
Only Home and Away.
Stuff there. I love Hungry Ghosts. It's the last episode tonight. I've got to just watch it.
All right. I've never heard of it.
On SBS. It's a really good series set in Vietnamese thing. It's got a bit of Buddhism in it and everything. It's really good. Very scary.
That's the excuse, Graham. It's Buddhist. I like this excuse. Anyway, and the last type of laziness is laziness of looking down on yourself or underestimating your abilities, which means that if you think that, how can someone like me do that? This is totally beyond me. You're not becoming enthused about doing it. No, so that's the break. Sorry? I think that kind of, so when Shantideva will explain it later on in the chapter on joyous effort, he says that, first of all, you should become, I mean, normally we say that you should think of your Buddha or be mindful of your Buddha nature. You know, so it's not that you are incapable inherently of doing that. Everyone can do that because everyone has a Buddha nature, but even more so, having born as a human being with freedoms and opportunity, then we can definitely improve our minds, improve our practice, because we have a Buddha nature. So that's kind of in general. But also Shantideva explains later on in this 7th chapter, he says that rather than falling prey to discouragement, he said, come up with a good plan. Make sure that you have a good assessment of your abilities, and think that, I think that, as we say often, there's nothing that does not become easier due to familiarity. So, or with familiarity. So it says, come up with a good plan, assess what your capacities are, and be honest about your capacities, and then do what you can do, and don't worry about what you cannot do. This is kind of paraphrasing what he says, but it's coming up in the 7th chapter. Yeah. How you do it. Yeah, self-discipline. It speaks about those 4 powers. And one of them is the power of stability, which kind of, this is what I've mentioned is you have a good assessment of your ability, what you can do and what you cannot do. And then you develop the power of stability, in which kind of think that this is what I'm going to undertake, and I'm going to bring it to completion without leaving it half done. All right, but we'll look at that more when we get to the 7th chapter.
With that significance, I just feel a little bit like, I see you run around like doing all this crazy stuff, so over hyperactive. You better if you just lay down in bed.
Yeah.
Better if you just lay down in bed a little bit.
Ace Holding said that, he said get a good 8 hours sleep at night, at least. so that then you can study, you can practice, you can.
It's like, what I do, if I do take a break, I try to put my phone on flight mode, because otherwise, you can lie in bed, but your mind is still kind of busy with the gadgets. All right, let's do some dedications. May I quickly become Guru, Lord Buddha, and lead innate sentient beings to his enlightened realm because of these merits. May the Supreme Jewel Bodhicitta, which is not a reason, arise and grow, and may that which is a reason never diminish, but increase more and more. Stands in the snowy mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. Powerful generosity, cleansing God, so please remember into samsara. Amen. You uphold the subduer small way, you serve as a bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading into us victorious talking. Mercifully accomplishes magnificent prayers, honoring the three Jews, protector of myself and others. Your disciples, please live long. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Peace out.
Great, thanks.
Thank you very much.
Enjoy the last episode.
Yeah, I hope I'm allowed to watch it. Oh, well, I'm going to anyway, but it's fabulous. Yeah, it's a really great show. It's got a bit of everything. A bit scary though. You guys better not watch it. It's too scary.
All right. How many episodes?
It's four episodes. You can probably
right.
get it on demand. The last one tonight.
Yeah. All right.
I'm getting scared already thinking about it.
All right. Well, have someone to tuck you in.
Yeah, well, they're very scary, these hungry ghosts. They've come back from the dead to haunt the living. It's really quite scary.
As they do.
But I think the Buddha's going to wipe them out in the end, send them back to hell or wherever they came from. I hope so. Okay, bye guys.
Bye.